Hey, what's up, you guys? Just out here in front of my house working on some projects. I'm all covered in paint and dirty, but I realized it is a perfect day to teach you guys about the 3 different kinds of lighting. So let's get started. We're going to talk about sunlight, shade, and window light, and why they are awesome and how to use them. Let's get started. All right, first things first, let's talk about sunlight. So you can see I'm standing in the sun. The sun is behind the camera and it's shining on my face. It's kind of bright. But this is a good starting point, and a good rule for starting out in photography is you always want to find the brightest light source and put it behind the photographer. So the sun's behind the camera here, which means it's shining on my subject. And here's why. Look at my face. Notice the details you can see. Notice how I really stand out and I really pop. And if it was a little bit better light, you'd be able to see my eyes. It's not perfect, but it's close. Watch what happens as I turn and put the sun behind me. And you can see now how everything on my face has gotten kind of dark. The camera's trying to compensate for that backlighting, but cameras usually don't, and usually end up with your subject getting really, really dark, kind of like this. This is kind of more often than not what happens when you have that strong backlighting. In fact, it's usually even darker than this. So, first rule of thumb when you're shooting in sunlight is to identify where the sun is and put it behind the camera, behind the photographer, like this. So there you go. There it is one more time. You could put it off to the side a little bit, like this is pretty good, or like this is pretty good. And you can see those shadows moving around on my face as we change the position to the sunlight. When we get into Photo 3.4, we talk a lot more about lighting patterns and those shadows on the face and why they matter. But for now, I just want you to be thinking, where is the sun? Where is the brightest light source? And I want you to put it somewhat behind you so that it is shining on your subject. Okay, the second spot we look for good lighting is in the shade. And I love photographing in the shade. It's one of my favorite spots to take pictures. And you can see here I am in the shade in front of my house. And what I've done is I put myself in the shade and then I've identified where is the brightest light source. And in this case, the brightest light source is all that sunny stuff behind me. And so I have put that sunny stuff, all that stuff that's in the sun, I put that behind the camera, and we get this really nice light. Take a good look into my eyes here. Look at how nice my eyes they are. They sparkle, they shine, they're brilliant, they're beautiful, if I can be honest with you. And we get that by having this really, really nice light shining on the eyes. Watch my eyes as I turn around and put that bright light source behind me. And you can see how my eyes kind of went dull and dark. They lost their sparkle, they lost their shine. They don't look nearly as good as they did when I had that bright light source shining into my eyes. Look at that. Sometimes I think I'm gonna get lost just staring into my own eyes right now. So the second rule or the second type of lighting is shade. And the rule for lighting in the shade is to put your subject completely in the shade like I am, and then make it so that whatever is the brightest part of the scene, which again is what's behind the camera right now, not what's behind me, but behind the camera or my cell phone, and put that so it's shining on your subject so that it's back there, not behind your subject. And that's going to give you that really nice shade light. One other thing to be aware of is if your subject is like half in the shade. Let me see if I can find a spot where I can do. So there you go. This is like one of the worst situations you can find yourself in. I've got the brightest light source behind me, and then look at that super bright spot on my head. That's because the majority of my face is in the shade, but some of it is in the sun, and that is just absolutely atrocious. That's the worst kind of lighting there is, and it drives me absolutely bonkers when I see stuff like that. The last kind of shady lighting you want to avoid is shady lighting like this, where I'm in the shade of a tree, and it's kind of splotchy, and so part of my face is in shade and part of it's not, and it just gets this really splotchy, gross look, and you really, really want to avoid that when you're shooting in the shade. So try to find solid shade and try to put that bright light source, that area back there where all that sunlight is, try to put that behind your subject, behind the camera, so that it's shining on your subject for best light through the shade. Okay, the last and final light source I want to talk about is called window light. And so here I am inside looking out the window of my house here. And you can see one of the nice things about window light is you get this really nice, soft, directional lighting on your subject. It does not have to be a person. It just happens to be in this case. So you have here what we would call the highlight side of the face and the shadow side of the face. So we have the highlight side of the face because this is the brighter side of the face over here, and the shadow side of the face because this is where it's darker and there are more shadows over here. So we have this really nice directional soft light from highlight to shadow, and we get that through window light. Couple of tips to make window light better. One, if you have a window that faces north, which this window does, you want to use that because there will never be direct sunlight coming through a north-facing window, which means as long as it's daylight, you can always use a window that faces north. If your window faces another direction, that's fine, but there will be times when you won't be able to use it because you'll have direct sunlight coming through it. And if we want to shoot in direct sunlight, we just go outside where we can have tons of direct sunlight. So try to find a window that has a north-facing window or that does not have direct sunlight coming through it. If it does, you can just wait till later or you can find another window. The other thing you want to do with window light is you want to usually have whatever your subject is turned slightly towards the window. And the reason why is because now I have more highlight on my face than shadow. You can see when I turn away from the window, I now have more shadow on my face than highlight. I got this dark shadow right here in my eye. I got all this side of my face is shadowy. I think having your subject turned towards the window for window light looks much nicer than when it is turned away from the window. So in order for this to work, I also have to have the camera really close to the window. In fact, I have the camera touching the window here, and so that I can be looking at the camera, but still also be looking slightly out the window and get that nice window light across my face. All right, just want to show you one last thing with window light, and that your subject doesn't have to be a person, obviously. I have this really, really nice lighting on this flower that gives me a really cool look, really nice lighting, and I love this thing right up against a window. The closer you can be to the window, the nicer the lighting is going to be. So that's one third final tip for good window light, is get your subject as close to the window as you can. All right, guys, that's pretty much it for the 3 types of lighting you need to know for Photo 1-2. We had sunlight, we have shade, and we have a window light, and we're going to use all 3 of them. So you need to master all 3 of them, and I'm not going to lie to you. It's a lot harder than it sounds. One thing you may want to start doing is every time you take a photograph, ask yourself, where is my light source? Where is the light coming from that is lighting my subject? And once you start to identify that, you're well on your way to becoming a great photographer.